Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Wheel of Evil by N.L. Holmes, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. And there goes the last patient of the day, said Neferet, collapsing against the gate of the dispensary in relief. It seems like every child in the neighborhood fell off something or got stung by some insect today. Benarib, the woman of her heart, and her fellow physician smiled shyly. I think we saw more little ones today than lived in the whole neighborhood. They must have been coming in from all over the city of the scepter. Neferet whooped with laughter. She could imagine a great parade of naked children marching from all quarters, converging on the little house in the working-class neighborhood of Wasset, where the two young women had their infirmary. Their apprentice, Mutui, with a 14-year-old's determination to be contrary at all costs, said sourly, Nothing interesting, though, just stupid little bumps and scratches. Ah, but that gave you a chance to practice your skills, my girl, Neferet said. You got to clean and bandage cuts and apply plasters and all sorts of things. Were you expecting to trepan somebody's skull on your first day of actual practice? Mutui rolled her eyes, a gesture perhaps copied from Neferet, but then perfected to its most dismissive. Benarib tried to hide a grin. She and Neferet exchanged a look of understanding. They'd been adolescents not so many years ago, and they were still young enough at 25 to remember what that awkward age was like. But even more, they understood the hurtful few years the girl had undergone. She and her brothers and sisters were orphans, or nearly so. Their father, a goldsmith, had been murdered, and their mother had run away, leaving her children behind. The younger siblings thought she was dead, but Mutui was old enough to suspect the truth of that cruel abandonment. She refused to act grateful to the two Sunnets for adopting the family. Shall we tell nurse to gather the troops and all march on home, then? I wouldn't object to an early supper. I hardly even remember lunch. I'll see to it that the animals have food and water, Benarib said, turning back to the rear of the house. Neferet headed into the small walled garden where some neat beds of simples tried to grow, despite the rowdy games of the children. The nurse, a cheerful, buxom young woman, not much older than her employers, called the youngsters to attention and scooped up baby Baki, who was toddling relentlessly after Brute, the mastiff. Baki was obsessed with everything, with trying to unroll the dog's curly tail. Has the night guard not come yet? Neferet asked the day guard. He was still squatting against the wall, whittling, an activity in which he passed much of his time. Everyone still remembered last year's violent attacks, and it seemed like a good idea to have an armed presence at all times just in case. After all, Neferet's husband, Lord Thomas, or Lord Maya, as he was officially known these days, was the master of the double house, the treasurer of the two lands. One never knew when some disgruntled taxpayer might try to take Lord Maya's wife or adopted children hostage, not to mention the young woman's propensity for getting involved in murder cases. No, my lady, the man replied, but he should be here any minute now. Don't worry, I won't leave until he comes. The three gray-beard dogs that helped the guard keep order swarmed happily when Benarib returned, a plate of scraps in her hand. She divided it among their dishes and checked the water. Cheetah the cat acted uninterested. She'd brought them an enormous rat that afternoon. Meanwhile, Nurse was having no luck getting the orphans to line up for the walk home. All right, people, Neferet called above the noise of the rowdy youngsters. Good children first in line, naughty ones last. We're heading to Mama and Papa's house. Predictably, everyone mobbed forward, trying to be first in the queue. Even 4-year-old Thierry pushed her baby brother to the ground and squeezed ahead of him, leaving him sitting, squalling on the gravel. Hume, a gentle 13-year-old apprenticed as a goldsmith, finally went to the back of the line, picked up the little one, and carried him to the front. That boy's too sweet for the real world, Neferet thought and touched. Nurse shouldered Thierry and off the small pack set, heading for the southern suburbs of the great city where Neferet's parents lived. Mutui, as usual, wanted nothing to do with her brothers and sisters, instead walking with the two young doctors. At their side paced Brute, his small eyes scanning the lane for danger. We're going to eat at Lord Hani's house? Asked Benarib. Might as well. Lord Thomas is still off hunting with the king. He won't be back until tomorrow at the earliest. Thomas's ancestral mansion was an enormous, gorgeously furnished, cold dwelling, and Neferet was eager to get away to the warmth and informality of her childhood home whenever she could justify it. Her marriage was a most unconventional one. Thomas, her husband, her father's friend, let her do whatever she wanted, making no demands upon her, physical or otherwise. After the loss of his first wife, Neferet's presence had kept his suitors at bay, and the marriage provided a respectable cover for her relationship with Benarib. I thought the king was a little boy. How is it he's hunting? Mutui asked in a disinterested tone. I don't know if he's actually taking shots, but like any boy would, he loves to go out in a chariot and chase after gazelles or whatever they're tracking. The grown-up courtiers will bring back enough game for them all. I'm sure. Lord Thomas is a good shot with a bow. I understand people have to eat, but I hate to think of killing those beautiful animals, said Benrib sadly. Papa won't hunt for just that reason. It was deep into the season of parrot, and the cool winter sun was already oblique, evening shadows stretching long across the narrow lanes and broad processional ways as they passed. Neferet regretted leaving her tufted linen cloak at the dispensary. Benrib, as she so often did, seemed to read her thoughts. Do you want to share my cloak, Neferet? Thanks, my girl. Neferet snuggled next to the smaller woman and drew the panel of heavy cloth around her shoulder. Better. Everything's better shared. By the time the little party with its chattering vanguard pulled at the red gate of Papa and Mama's house, the evening was sinking into brassy gold and purple. A scud of dry plane leaves rustled in the street along the wall. Neferet hallooed and pounded on the panel, and almost before she'd withdrawn her fist, the gate opened. Papa stood there, beaming. I thought it was you. Thomas is with the king, isn't he? He folded Neferet into a huge hug and then did the same with Benarib and Mutui. The younger children piled noisily into the garden without stopping to be greeted, sweeping the nursemaid along. Look who's come, Neferet's mother cried out happily from inside the house. Papa's grin faded. Uncle Pipi's here, he said quietly. He hasn't said anything yet, but I have the feeling he's in trouble again. If he hints about a loan, my duckling, don't offer him anything. He has to learn to get himself out of trouble, and I don't want Thomas to feel he's responsible for my family's imprudence. Imprudence was the word. Father's brother, Pipi, his junior by 4 years, and hence a man in his early 50s, was still a big 10-year-old when it came to managing his finances. He seemed to reel from his one costly obsession to another, which his salary as a low-level scribe in the Foreign Service couldn't support. There had been the horses, then the boats. Who knew what he'd gotten excited about now? Neferet felt downright adult by comparison to her feckless uncle. She heaved a sigh and shot Papa a complicit look of hopelessness. Understood, Papa Duck. While the children marched upstairs to games on the roof under the eye of Nurse, the two sonnets with their apprentice followed Papa into the salon where the family had gathered. Mama, Aunt Nedjembib, and Baggett's Isset were there, and sure enough, so was Uncle Pipi, in the flesh and plenty of it, as grandfather would say. He and Auntie jumped to their feet, bursting with life and loving enthusiasm, and welcomed the girls with open arms and shouts of happy laughter. Pipi could almost have passed for Papa's twin, but younger and a good bit fatter. He was broad and squat, with a smiling, square-jowled face with close-cropped hair and small, friendly brown eyes. His wide grin was marked by a space between the front teeth. Najimib looked surprisingly like him, with wild, frizzy hair and a comfortable air of perpetual untidiness. As a child, Neferet couldn't have asked for a more loving and indulgent pair of relatives. Where are the boys? She asked. The couple's youngest sons were twins and as undisciplined as their parents. They're at Najmed and Pakiki's house for dinner, Najemib said. They wanted to see their sister and the baby. Their oldest daughter was married to Neferet's next oldest brother, and they had just born Pakiki, his third little girl. Speaking of dinner, said Mama, your father was hoping for an early supper. I hope you girls won't object. Neferet laughed. You read our minds. It was too chilly to eat in the garden, so Mama had the servants set up small tables in the salon, upon which they set the pot-shaped loaves of bread, big bowls of dressed endive, and lentil soup. Where's grandfather? Neferet asked as they tucked into the food. At his lady friend's house, said Mama with a smile. I'm sure they're eating something more elegant than lentils. No apologies needed, my dove, Papa winked at his wife. It may be more elegant, but it couldn't be more delicious. This is my idea of a perfect winter meal. He mopped up a bit of salad sauce on his bread. How is your practice doing these days, girls? Aunt Nedjebib said around a mouthful of endive. Busy, Auntie. Matui got to set her hand to some bandaging. That must have been fun, Uncle Pipi said enthusiastically. I've always wanted to be a doctor. Neferet caught her father's eye. Sekhmet have mercy, is this his latest passion? Matui disabused him. It was boring. The others laughed. But Neferet noticed her parents exchange uneasy glances. We missed you at the farm this summer, my brother, Papa said carefully. We were at our own farm. Nedjebib gave a shriek of laughter and elbowed her husband. Right, Pipi? Pipi forced a smile and his chubby face grew crimson. Yes, well, farming wasn't all it was made out to be. He turned to Papa and said in a pitiful voice, It's a lot of hard work. It is indeed, Papa said with no sign of rebuke. So you bought a farm. Where is it? Too far away. It wasn't practical at all. But land is so expensive near the city. Pippy looked dejected. It seemed like a good idea, but you have to hire so many people to maintain it. And it was lonely out there with nobody around. It didn't work out. We sold it a month or two ago. I'm sure you turned a nice profit at least, Mama said innocently. But Nedajib hooted. Dear gods, no. We were flayed alive, weren't we, Pippy? But we're well out of it at any cost, I say. It probably sounds stupid, Hani, but I know we're always butting in on your family at the farm. I mean, father left it to you, and he probably wonders why we're always there, too. Hardly. He wondered why you weren't there last summer. It's for the whole family, Pippy. He turned it over to me to administer because, as you found out, it's a lot of work. But it's still his as much as it is mine and yours, too. You know you're always welcome. It's part of our childhood. That's what I told him, said Najibib, shaking her head, but he wanted to play landed gentry. As soon as Neferet had grown old enough to pick up on such things, it had become clear to her that Uncle Pippy felt like he was always in competition with Papa, and losing the contest. But enough of that, Papa said kindly. How are the children? The conversation turned to Najibib's baby and the rate at which the twins were shooting up. Gradually, Pippy's good cheer returned, and he seemed to have forgotten about the debacle of the farm. But sometimes, when the conversation lagged, a smile drifted off, and a haunted expression veiled his humor-crinkled eyes. Papa's right. Something's going on. Neferet shot a surreptitious glance at Benrib, who appeared to have noticed too. How is your husband, my dear? Aunt Nedivjivib said to Neferet. As busy as ever? Fine. He does work a lot, but right now he's hunting with the king and a group of courtiers. He's the handsomest man, Nedjibib sighed dreamily, then poked Pippy. After you, of course. But Pippy seemed to be interested, not offended. Hunting, you say? I guess they need good chariots for that. I suppose so, Papa said blandly. I suppose chariots always need to be good. They move at great speed. Neferet experienced a hair-raising ride at Thomas's chariot only a few months before, and she could vouch for the terrifying speed at which it moved. They're so flimsy, it's amazing they hold together. They have to be light so the horses can pull them without tiring, Papa said, watching his brother closely. Pippy's little eyes had grown bright with attentiveness, and he leaned forward as if he couldn't wait to jump into the discussion. A good chariot maker could ask almost anything he wanted for his work, he said with the air of revealing a great secret. It's a wonderful business to invest in. A sudden silence descended on the party as they realized they'd discovered Pippy's latest passion. How exactly does one invest in an artisan's workshop? Papa asked after a moment. Isn't it just a master and his journeyman and apprentices, the same as with any business? Yes, but if some investor provided him with supplies and an up-to-date workshop and a list of clients, that would be worth a cut of the profits, wouldn't it? I mean, the margin of profit is very high, Hani. The supplies are cheap. It's all in the skilled labor. Think of the number of rich men like Thomas who want a top-notch chariot for hunting. Think of the army. Why, they must use thousands, and they're always getting wrecked and have to be replaced. Pippy was fizzy with excitement. At his side, Nedjibib rolled her eyes. I told him anything that seems too good to be true probably is. Do you mean you've invested in some chariot maker's workshop? Papa asked neutrally. Suddenly, Pippy looked hunted. He cast his eyes back and forth as if there might be spies all around. It's complicated, brother. I need some advice. Ever discreet, Mama rose. Ladies, let's adjourn to the terrace, shall we? She called for the servants to carry Bacchidis's couch, and she and Nedajib trooped away to the staircase. Neferet, are you girls going to join us? But things are just getting interesting. Benrib got to her feet and took Matoy by the hand. We're coming, Lady Nefer. She sidled around the table with the adolescent in tow and gave Neferet a significant look to say as if to say, stay if you want, but our presence would just embarrass your uncle. What a ripe fig among women, Neferet thought. How have I deserved her? Once the others have disappeared up the stairs, Papa laid a hand on his brother's shoulder. What's going on, Pippy? You seem troubled. The younger man slumped in dejection. It sounds so easy, doesn't it? Easy gold, but it's turned into a nightmare, Hani. How could anything so simple have become so complicated? Start at the beginning. 2 months ago or so, a friend came to me with a sure business proposition. He knew a chariot maker who wanted to expand his business, but couldn't afford to find a bigger workshop or hire more men. My friend was going to help him financially in return for a share of the profits, but he wasn't very rich himself and thought that if several of us went together, the artisan could make more vehicles and hence more profits. Perfectly straightforward. Papa nodded encouragement. I had all those Devons from the sale of the farm in my hands, so I thought, why not? There turned out to be 6 of us investors, each of us putting in a modest amount, but there wasn't much profit coming out at the end. It's not so easy to scale up a skilled craft like that, and I guess the real problem is that the market's limited. How many people are rich enough to own a chariot and team? I suggested selling to the army, but it turns out they've got their own workshops. Of course, murmured Papa. So have you pulled it out of it? Pipi looked up at him with stricken eyes. That's the problem, Hani. I can't. What do you mean? Neferet cried despite herself. Did you sign a contract? Sort of, but it's worse than that. Uncle Pipi buried his face in his hands, and then when he raised it again, his lashes were sparkling with tears. Honey, my friend tried to pull out, and the next day he was dead. Oh no, thought Neferet, dread creeping up her spine. Uncle has gotten involved with some rough characters. Maybe it was coincidence, said Papa hopefully. Oh no, they came to see me too. Said, we hope you're not thinking about backing out because see Penjuity here. He may have died of something contagious and you could be the next to catch it. Papa grunted, his optimism melted out. His drawn-down eyebrows spoke of how troubling he found this news. He considered his lap. Dear gods, I have a wife and children, Pipi wailed. These people might hurt them somehow to pressure me. I'm trapped. Who is this they? Not the artisan himself, surely. No, at least I don't think so. There are these men who came to talk to us and to see we signed the contract. They collect the Devons every week. They get the supplies and things the artisan needs to keep working. I don't know who they are or what they have to do with the workshop. I don't know so much as know their names. Who are all the other investors? Neferet asked. Do you know them? Not at all. I don't know anything about them except for one. He's a scribe in the chancery, but that's the only thing I know. Pipi groaned and cradled his head in his hands. I've got to get out. I can't afford to spend any more on this thing. I needed that farm gold to pay back a loan. I thought that this would earn me some quick Devons, but it's just getting thrown down a hole. A discouraged silence stretched out. Papa and Neferet exchanged a look of gloom. Finally, Papa said reluctantly, I'll try to help you, little brother, but it sounds to me as if you've gotten involved with the underworld. Pipi stared up at him, wide-eyed. You mean demons and things? Oh, hidden one, help me. No, I mean criminals and things. Thugs, assassins, black marketeers. May the hidden one help you indeed.